The following are the tools and materials needed: soldering iron and stand, wet rags, long nose pliers, diagonal side cutter, the soldering tool, lead or solder, and our power supply kit. Let's start. Let's open the power supply kit. Okay, so remove the cover of the chassis, place it on top. Okay, let's check the materials. Let us start with the PCB or the printed circuit board. So we now mount the small components first on the PCB. So we first mount the diodes and resistors. So be mindful of the polarity of components. The silver band on the diode indicates polarity, and it is equivalent to the vertical lines. Okay, so just look at the diode symbol and then place or mount the diode component on top of it. Okay, so we first bend the terminals of the diode using long nose pliers, then mount it on the PCB. As for the resistor, there is no need to observe polarity since this component is not polarized. So you may mount it on the board the way you like it. It's just that you have to mount it on its proper location. Okay, so we continue. Plug the soldering iron. Wait until it starts to melt the solder or lead. Make sure that the soldering iron tip is clean and ready. And again, do not forget to wear mask before soldering. When the soldering iron is already hot, place it on the pad and terminal to heat them first, then apply the solder or lead to the connections. When you see that the lead application is enough, remove the lead, then followed by the soldering iron by around a second. Do the same for the rest of the diode terminals and resistor. Wipe the tip of the soldering iron on the wet rag from time to time to maintain its operating condition and cleanliness. Check the connections made from time to time to maintain the arrangement of components mounted on top of the PCB. When the soldering iron is not in use, place it to the soldering stand to keep you safe from skin burns. After making enough number of connections, you might find it difficult to solder terminals at the center. Cut the excess terminals of the connections you have made, then just solder the remaining terminals. When cutting the terminals, do not rock the diagonal side cutter, just press it. And be careful on the terminals being cut, since it may also fly. Once you are done soldering the small components, proceed to the capacitors. Just make sure that the polarity of the diodes are followed correctly. Okay, so longer terminal positive, longer terminal positive, negative, shorter terminal negative, or that one. Okay, that one is negative. There, negative. Negative short terminal, positive long terminal. Okay, shaded, shaded on the board is negative. Shaded on the board is negative. Not shaded, positive. Okay, we follow the polarity. Positive is to positive and negative is to negative. Same. Okay, now we solder. Congratulations, you are basically done with the main board of the power supply. Just make sure that the capacitors you have connected followed the correct polarity. They actually meet at the center. You may now start attaching the rotary switch to the chassis. First, move the switch holder from the chassis, unscrew it, then place the rotary switch. Be mindful of the stopper on the rotary switch. Continue attaching the rubber grommet, the fuse holder, and the power switch on the chassis. Place the fuse inside the fuse holder and close it. that one on, off, on, off. Okay, so I just press it here. Okay. Now we connect the switch to the transformer. Okay, we first cut the wire. Okay. It. Prepare all the wires needed to connect the rotary switch to the output terminals of the transformers. Those are the 3 volts, 4.5 volts, 6 volts, 7.5 volts, and 9 volts, and 12 volts terminal on the transformer. Be mindful of the connections of the wire on the rotary switch. Make sure that you will be able to wire the first terminal on the rotary switch that is assigned for 3 volts. You can do that by moving the knob of the switch counterclockwise. When it stops, look on the contact point in the switch. Where it rests is the terminal assigned for 3 volts. On the left side of the screen, you will be able to see the wiring connections and assignment of wire on the rotary switch terminals. To facilitate the easy connection of wires on the terminals of the transformer and rotary switch, the terminals are pre-soldered, or lead is applied on the terminals of the transformer and the rotary switch. Again, on the left side of your screen, you will see the complete wiring diagram of the whole power supply circuit. You can use this diagram to wire the AC cord on the transformer, the fuse holder, the on-off switch, the rotary switch, the PCB board or the printed circuit board, and the LEDs. When you are done wiring the rotary switch and the transformer, arrange the wires and then start connecting the 0 volt to one of the input terminals on the PCB. Again, in soldering, we need to maintain the cleanliness of the tip of our soldering iron so that it will facilitate the easy connection and the easy flow of solder on the terminals being soldered. So, from time to time, wipe the tip of the iron on the wet sponge. Now we can connect the pole on the rotary switch close to the terminals with wires on the PCB second input. Now you can start connecting the LEDs or power display of the power supply to the rotary switch. Be sure to follow the correct polarity of the LEDs. The longer terminal is the positive terminal of the LED. Connect all positive terminals of the LEDs on rotary switch terminals. After connecting all the positive terminals of the LEDs on the terminals of the rotary switch, connect all the negative terminals of the LEDs by soldering all of them together. In soldering the terminals, you can form the terminals in one line, or you can make them form an arc to make them presentable and arrange inside the chassis. As you can see, all the negative terminals of the LEDs are joined together. Now attach the negative and positive terminal post on the chassis and start wiring the negative terminals and the positive terminals on the PCB. Be mindful of the color of polarity. Red terminal pose is assigned for positive output of the power supply, and the black terminal pose is assigned for negative output of the power supply. You are getting close to finish your project. Start connecting the AC cord to the transformer. As the AC cord enters the grommet, create a knot so that the AC cord will not be pulled outside, and this is to protect the connection of the AC cord to the transformer and fuse holder. Continue wiring the on-off switch, fuse holder, and transformer. Now, connect the resistor on the two poles of the rotary switch. These are the two terminals at the center of the rotary switch. This resistor will connect the LEDs to the supply to activate the power display of the power supply. Now, wire the negative output of the PCB to the negative post. Make an extra wire for the negative supply of the LEDs. arrange the wires inside the chassis. And then start placing the PCB or the circuit board on the chassis. Use the screw and do not forget to place the spacer between the PCB board and the chassis. Then use the lock or the nut to tighten the connection. Now connect the negative supply for the LEDs or for the power display. Now inspect and double check all the connections made, most especially on wiring the fuse, transformer, AC cord, switch, and the terminals on the rotary switch. When you are done with the inspection, cover the power supply chassis and then start checking the output. First, check
Okay,
the
3 volts,
LED power display.
4.5, 6, 9, okay, turn up, turn on, 9, 7.5, 6, 4.5, 3 volts, 3 volts, turn up, turn. Okay, so let's measure the voltage, red positive and black negative. Okay, then, okay, 3 volts, 4.5 or 4, close, 6, close to 6, 7.5, close to 7.5, 9, okay, so 12 cannot be measured there, so we move the to 12, get 12, okay, so 50 volts, okay, turn up, 0, okay, that's it.